concept to keep in mind is what I call the solicitation ladder. As you can see from the illustration, it's basically using the ladder concept as a way of indicating what is the lowest level of solicitation up to the highest, with the bottom level being almost an announcement or a solicitation through your newsletter. Then moving up from there, there's the bulk mail letter, non-personal letter, to the personal letter, to the phone solicitation, all the way up at the top where you've got a team visit. What's important about this is that the further up you go with the ladder, the more effective the solicitation. And the further up on your gift pyramid, when you're talking about your top donors, you want, whenever possible, to have the solicitation be in the most effective way, which is that highly personal way of face-to-face solicitation, particularly if it's a large ask. I think one way of looking at this is simply the question of, well, what difference does it make? It makes a lot of difference. Very few people make large sacrificial gifts based on simply receiving a form letter. A form letter, a bulk mail letter, is perfectly appropriate for many very, very small donors. But it's not very cost effective. It's a high cost process, and it's certainly not cost effective if you're dealing with large donors and going after very very large gifts. A good context for putting this into is an example that I like to use of dealing with an organization where we were going to a donor for $2 million. This was somebody who was giving $2,000 in response to an appeal letter, clearly had a strong relationship with this organization, cared deeply about it, and had huge wealth. As we talked about that solicitation, I said, you need to get on a plane, you need to fly out to California, you need to tell him that you need a half a day of his time. And the response was, well, he's going to be here next week. Let's just ask him over lunch. I said, no, over lunch you tell him you want to fly out to California to spend a half day or a day talking about why this is so important. You need to set the stage that says this is very significant. Well, they didn't take my advice, and they said, we're going to write him. I'm going to write him a very clear and important letter. So they wrote him, and they did the $2 million ask in a letter. They got a call a couple of days later, and in the phone conversation, he said, oh, I got your letter, and I've sent the check back. I really value what you do. I got a call saying, I think he's doing something significant. He made a point of calling me. Well, the letter arrived, and it had a note saying, again, I think so highly of your work. Enclosed was a check for $2,000. Why? Because the context for that ask was such that he simply wrote out the check.
The response that he'd always given for that.
The response, and the fact is, he probably didn't read that letter.
Yeah.
You didn't set the context for a $2 million ask. You set the context for simply another $2,000 ask. Major implications. And once you've done that, it's hard to back up.
It's very hard.
And now go for the $2 million ask. So keeping in mind that solicitation ladder, and particularly when you're talking about large solicitations, you need to be as high on that ladder as you possibly can.